Thank you. And thank you, seniors. And thank you for our panel for coming. This is always a fun time of the year for the seniors as they transition from their school life to their further goals, and they get an opportunity to ask questions and discuss what it means to use experience and wisdom to make their choices. Our first question is for the entire panel, and we will start with Carol, and it's biographical. What is the school that you graduated from, and what year was it?
I graduated from Colorado City Academy in 1966. The school had been in session 2 years when I started. So I am a very early next year. It'll be 60 years. Okay, I graduated from Colorado City Academy in 76. So next year will be 50 years.
Thank you.
I graduated from the Colorado City Academy in 1967. And my teachers thought that wasn't soon enough. They were anxious to see me get out and get a little experience. Now I know why.
He said his teachers were anxious for him to get out and get some experience. And now he knows why. Yeah.
Or what? I think so, at least in our society. I'm me. For you that don't know me, I'm Brother Hammon's brother. I have to remind people of that quite often. Everybody thinks you're older than I am. Well, they have a hard time thinking that I'm related to such a polished person. I graduated with Carol in 1966. And I will say this, at least about the girls that graduated in our class. They were sterling individuals for the most part. Many of those young ladies married into plural marriage with older men and succeeded. Want some names?
Sure.
My mother, Helen, Martha Barlow, Josephine Barlow, Serene Palmer,
Trina Holmes.
Karina Holm, Rosemary Burnham, and I think there was one or two other, but I'd have to go look at the picture again.
And also Brother Johnson's daughter, not Elizabeth.
Leona?
Leona.
I think she got married before we graduated, but anyway, I don't think so.
And your sister Julia.
Yes, but she had not entered into plurality. But they were a great bunch of young ladies. And I would think that you could look at any of their lives 50, 60 years down the road and say, wow. One thing I have to ask missionary boys quite often, what school did you graduate from?
Thank you.
I'm Priscilla Hammon. I think most of you know me. I graduated in 1974. So I would have been out 52 years, right? The academy was a wonderful place to attend for me. So we graduated we were the 13th graduating class. We graduated with 35 students. There were only 3 of us in Centennial Park associated today because the split was in beginning to life. Out of 35 students, there's 3 of us. That would be Paul Timpson, married to my sister Irma. Diane Hammon, who's married to Dan.
Thank you. And thank you for sharing and doing the math for us, the amount of time you've had since high school, because our first question is going to come back to that. And it's for Elizabeth Dockstader. Is it possible for a young person to be wise, or does it take age and experience to get there?
Okay, so if I'm honest, I have to say it is very possible for a young person to be wise. So the evidence of that is I got married in 74. So you do the math. I was never a senior, but I graduated. So I graduated 2 years and 1, which was a good move. That was a wise decision. But it was not uncommon for girls in the academy to get married back when I was going to school. So my father came to me right when I was headed to the academy to register my sophomore year. So I was sitting out waiting for a ride up, and afterwards I'm just like, you should have just walked. that might have solved my problem. But I prayed a lot. I spent a lot of time on my knees, and I told the Lord that I didn't want to get married. I just did not want to. I wanted to go to school. I could have gone. Yeah, I love school. And I told Daddy that I wanted to finish school. And of course, that was not uncommon, that girls finish school after they got married. Anyway, it was a wise decision for me to do that. I took everything I had, but it was a wise decision. So I think it's possible. And it doesn't have to be a tough one like that. It can be like, it was a good decision for me to graduate 2 years and 1. Anyway, so
Well,
I think
thank you.
it's possible. I was 15, so I was young.
So very young and very wise.
No, I'm not waving any flags about the wise things, but I was very young.
Joel, you spoke earlier about your teachers being anxious for you to get some experience. The question to you is there a difference between intelligence and wisdom?
Yes, there is. A lot of intelligent people really do a lot of stupid things. And wisdom, you use that intelligence to make wise decisions. When I was about 26 years old, I was building some cabins for a couple of FBI agents, and one of them said, "Joel, I need some advice from you. I've got this boy that's 26 years old, and he ain't got a lick of sense." And I said, "Well, I'm only 26. I don't know what I can do for you." "Well, you was born old. You was born older than my boy's been able to get in 26 years. So they're different things, intelligence and wisdom, but there's a connection. And if you use the intelligence you have for a good cause, that's wisdom.
Thank you, because that kind of encapsulated our next question: what is the criteria? How do you know you've made a wise choice? She said, looking back, it was a wise choice. You say,
is that still my question?
I think so, because I think you started that answer with, how do we know if we were to walk out today and say, we want to be wise today? What is the criteria that we...
Jesus said when John came, you said neither eating nor drinking, which I suppose means either eating meat or drinking wine. So you said, "Behold, a wild man has come among us. The Son of Man came both eating and drinking." And you said, "Behold, a winebibber and a glutton. But wisdom is known of her children." In the New English translation, it says, "You recognize wisdom by the fruits that it produces." I think that's a good rendition for it.
Okay, thank you very much. Priscilla, what habits do you think every day, if we were looking at the fruits, What habits do we nurture that promotes wisdom or a wise life?
I think one of the habits that I established and I learned this from the academy, it was better to keep up than to catch up. And that has blessed my life every single day. I don't brag that I can still get an A out of algebra if I were to take that class again or anything, but I learned some of those skills from the academy, and I often say that I use skills that I learned at the academy every single day of my life, just in how I run my life and the things, because I was taught to get up and be motivated and to progress through life and have a purpose every day in my life. And so those habits have blessed my life every single day as a wife and mother.
Thank you. Uncle Arthur, who do you think has been the wisest influence in your life and why?
Well, Joe and I was reminiscing here just before you turned the mics on. You guys didn't think us wise. When we were sitting in those chairs, it was people would have had to scratch their head pretty hard. It's hard to put your finger on one person. You can check with Brother Hammond, but Dad wasn't one to gather up his family like this and give them the skinny. You understand that language? He sent us to church. And if you weren't in church, you could count on it that Dad was going to know the reason why. And so we not only heard President J. Marion Hammon in church, President Leroy Sunderland Johnson, President Guy Hill Musser when he was there, President Llewellyn T. Jeffs when he was there, President Richard Seth Jessup, President Carl Holm, and President Alma A. Timpson. And our father was very influential with us. But I don't know how to take out of me what President Richard Seth Jessup and put in here. We talk about the division. It was a big part of our lives. But to me, the issue was never President J. Marion Hammon. The issue was what we had been taught. Number one, what Brother Johnson had taught us. Never ask the Lord for another testimony. Ask Him to strengthen the one you have. Support all of the members of the priesthood council. Do you know what all means? I hope so. President Jessup taught us the lineage of priesthood. He taught us of Lauren Woolley and John W. Woolley. And people are resurrecting those old issues once again. So we might get tried again on them. Except you didn't know Brother Richard Jessup. So I would say, if I had to put my finger on one thing, the priesthood council of our day.
Thank you. And Carol, we'd like to explore the connection between adversity and wisdom. Do you think that adversity is connected to wisdom? And what is an experience that seemed hard at the time that you feel like changed you and made you more wise?
Well, first I'd have to confess to having any wisdom. And I don't know that I dare do that. I was visiting with Brother Johnson one time after going and getting a little experience I probably could have done without. And he told me a similar experience in his life where somebody talked him into going and selling insurance. And they did all right until they used up all their friends and relatives. And they got out doing what we call cold prospecting. And they got really hungry. And the man that got him into it was with them, and he was just as hungry as they were. He felt bad for dragging them out of their natural habitat. And they saw a poster of some big, strong man that offered $100 to anybody that could beat him. This man that had got him into the insurance thing said, "I'm going to beat that guy, and I'm going to send you home with the money." And Brother Johnson said he never saw a big man take such a beating from a little man. But he won the fight, took the $100 and sent them home. And Brother Johnson finished up the conversation. He says, "Experience is a dear teacher, but she teaches deep. And experience teaches you on a level that you can't learn in a classroom. And the reason why is because you get to make some choices, and then you get to watch the results that flow from those choices. And that's where you begin to get wisdom to know whether that choice was a good one or a bad one, is the results. And as long as you can see cause and effect, then you gain wisdom by it. But if you're just looking for somebody to blame for all your troubles, you can have all kinds of experience and end up with as little wisdom as when you started. So one of the elements of developing wisdom is to take responsibility for the choices you make and examine and try to glean what wisdom you can, whether it was a good choice or not. Back when, Arthur's referenced the division, back when we had to make a choice, we attended our first meeting over at Brother Timpson's place in May of 1984. And it was a pretty big decision. Up until then, we met as one group over there. I was visiting with Brother Alme Timpson, and he said, "We're going to hold a meeting here in my home tomorrow morning. You're invited to come if you'd like. You're also authorized to invite any of your brothers that are interested. How do you feel about it?" Well, I thought I'd keep going up there until they throw me out. I don't think it's going to take them very long. They know I have some opinions. He said, "Well, they've thrown Brother Hammon and I out." And I said, "Yes, they did. I'll be here." That was a moment of decision for me. And I've never looked back and said, I sure made the wrong one that day. I've looked at men who I actually admired, made the opposite choice, and took years for the results to flow from it and really come and hit them. But that community got hit like none other that I've ever seen. And most of them couldn't figure out what it was that hit. So when we have to make big decisions, we sometimes have to do it beyond our level of wisdom, and that's where God comes in. You have to ask God to guide you in your choices. And if you can get an answer to that and follow it, that shows good wisdom, because it'll turn out. Well, it'll turn out anyway. Whatever you do, it's going to have some consequences. And you can learn from it. They have to apply your mind, and sometimes it's not so much a matter of intelligence as it is having the courage to act on the knowledge that you have. We're all social creatures. We like to be liked. And so most of the decisions we make, we look around and see how our friends and others that will view us if we make a particular decision, rather than base it strictly on truth and what's the right thing to do. I sometimes take lunch over there at the 10:45, and man that used to guard the door over there came in. He says, "What are you doing hanging out in a bar?" For any of you that don't know, I'm not a drinker. Water, coffee, I'll do that. And he had a man with him that had been parked in a pickup outside Brother Timpson's gate the morning we first held a meeting there, taking down names. And so anybody that attended that meeting that morning was no longer welcome up at the other meeting place. And so he says, "What are you doing hanging out in the bar?" And I said, "Same thing that he was doing. Parked outside Brother Timpson's gate the first time we held a meeting down there. Just taking names."
Thank you very much.
So wisdom and humility are probably some of the most elusive things that you can go to try to tackle, because with either one of them, if you think you have it, you probably don't.
Thank you very much. Carol, what is the best advice your father gave you, and how did it help your life?
My father had a lot of advice, good advice. One of the things that I remember the most, though, that made it very good for me, is he said, the world steps aside for people who know where they're going and how to get there. And to me, I was a very driven person. I wanted to be successful. And so I wanted to know where I was going. And I think that when we talk about adversity and wisdom, I think adversity is one of the best teachers for wisdom. I don't know that you can't have wisdom without it, but this concept that if wisdom, you cannot give it, you have to get it, and you have to almost get it through your own experience. And you just don't always get wisdom through experience, because it isn't until you connect the values and good values to that experience that you can actually get some wisdom from it. And it's like Jill was saying, adversity, then, if you take that and say, what am I supposed to learn from this experience? And then go back to your teachings that Uncle Arthur talked about with what you have been taught, then you can connect and make wise decisions. But my father felt like that if you were diligent in actually knowing where you wanted to go, and you think about where you want to go, you want another thing that he had put into my mind was I wanted more than anything to be in the line of the work that the Lord had put me on the earth to do. How do you know that your course is pleasing before Him? And that then is where you choose to want to go.
Thank you. Elizabeth, what is a piece of wisdom that you've learned through marriage that you wish you had started with?
Okay, so it's not like there's not a lot, right? Because there's a lot. But there's one particular thing that I remember learning, and it was so good for me. And that is that you cannot change anyone but yourself. you have a challenge, a challenging situation in your family that you're trying to deal with, and it's always somebody else's, you're waiting for somebody else to fix their problems, and then the problem would be solved. Well, no matter how logical you are or how right you think you are, you cannot change anyone else but yourself. I can change me. I can change what I'm doing. I can change my thinking. And that was probably the best thing. I mean, I've learned lots of things, but that was.
Thank you very much. We were going to ask the same question to Priscilla. If that,
I totally agree with Miss Elizabeth. That is a very valuable key. But I remember my father telling me, giving me some keys just before I got married, one of which was never expect your husband to be anything like your dear old dad. In other words, go into your family and become part of his family. Don't try to take your father's family into that family and change your family. So I appreciated that very much. And one other thing comes to mind, he had taught us often that always make everything, every place that you walk through, every room in your home, every room around you, your surroundings, better simply because you stepped through that area. Always be observant and be willing to do the small things. Stop and pick up a paper. Stop and straighten a rug. Just take a minute to make your surroundings better just simply because you passed through. And I appreciated those things.
thank you very much. Uncle Arthur, you are also going to get the same question. What is a piece of wisdom that you learned through marriage that you wish you had started with?
Well, there's so many, right? First of all, the Disney definition, happily ever after, is a damn lie. Life is work. Doesn't have to be unpleasant. It can be very pleasant, but it's work. And to think that you're lost in some romantic, what do you call it, cloud, and that you're never going to have struggles and troubles, that's a damn lie. That's what life's about.
Thank you very much. That you're getting really good pieces of wisdom here. That's what about. Carol, in what way is your life exactly how you dreamed it would be?
Oh, in a lot of ways, and in a lot of ways, no. I never could have dreamed it being as good as it is. And the reason I say that is because we don't have the capacity or the wisdom as a young person to understand what the difference is between living a life to God and living a life to ourselves. Because we have a tendency to dream for ourselves. But if we live and we live for others and incorporate the gospel within our life, we get a dream fulfilled that we cannot imagine.
Thank you. This is our final question, and it will go towards all the panel. So we'll just go down the line here if that works. This panel came off of a phrase or an analysis of a cultural term that we say to each other. We'd like to put old heads on young shoulders. What is one way that you feel like we can be an old head on a young shoulder? So,
Joanne? I was raised in the generation when J.M. Hammon was trying to reform the academy students. I mean, literally reform them. He threatened many times in through the years that I was going, but he would close the doors if we did not reform ourselves. He would close the doors to the school and we would not have access to it. And so those were some difficult years to go through sometimes for me, and yet very, very choice times. He often said to us, you do not have to act like the teenagers of the generation you were born into. He says, you don't have to go up over Fool's Hill. He says, step around it. Go around it, young people. think make good choices, and that really did help me to just think I don't have to be like the world. I could walk around it, but I also made choices to be friends with some of the older ladies in the community and to just glean from them the things that they had to share. And so that helped me make wise choices as well. But I was, like I said, I was married right in the heart of the split. And so, in the beginning of the split, it took 10 years to really, I graduated in 74. Bill said we had our first meeting at Hammon and Timpson's in 84. 10 long years. 10 long years to get it finalized. But I knew, my father said, what I had been taught. I had a testimony. By the time I was a senior, I really felt strongly that what I wanted to do with my life. And so I didn't waver on the things I had been taught, and that helped me a great deal. But I prayed, girls, every day. I prayed every day that God would send me into a family and place me beside a man that I did not have to change my religion for. And so those things really helped me. And so I think to be involved, like I was able to be involved early on in put my hands into the work early on, those are really wonderful experiences that came my way, and I feel very blessed because of those.
Thank you.
Arthur?
I suppose because you're moderating, this is a speech class.
Yes.
Okay.
Isn't everything. Like
Okay.
every class is a little bit of a speech class.
Right. What do you take a speech class for? Good. To be articulate, to know how to present your thoughts in a well-organized, coherent manner. But there's something that is just as important. I come up against it continually. While my phone was ringing, I come up against it. Do you realize how valuable listening is? And what a skill? If we never spoke a word, and if we're speaking, I find out our ears are closed. So if we are to gather in understanding and gather wisdom, we need to learn how to listen. And it is a real skill. I've never seen a successful head transplant. Have you? Can we just cut off a head and go put it on somebody else? So how do we put old heads on young shoulders? Young heads need to learn to listen well enough to come to some understanding and implement it. It's so many times the things that we want just aren't the things that are good for us. I got a little girl that goes to school here. She is a sugar. But she's got a last name Hammon. And then her mother's a Knudson. That's going to catch up with her. You think that I can say, you need to change your appetites? Now, that's just one thing. I had an experience in Vietnam. I'd been there 2 months. And I got a letter from one of the boys I was inducted into the Army with. And he's passed on, so I don't need to. But he told me how hard it was for him to keep encouraged when he could not come home every weekend. He was stationed up to Tooele. And I'm sitting here in the middle of the jungle. And I jump up and I kick my backpack. And I said out loud, what the hell am I doing here? And another one of my fellow soldiers who turned out to be a good friend, and I still maintain that acquaintance, looked at me and he says, who the hell do you think you are? And it kind of shocked me because I was being the spoiled kid that I was. And when I let it settle on me, and I apologized to him and to the other ones there because I says, you're right. You know what it did for me? It helped me come to a realization I was there. Nothing was going to deliver me. I had to go through what I had to go through. And so I had to acclimate. I had to get real. And before I was through with my tour of duty, I came to this stark realization because the Lord showed me. I was probably in one of the safest places I could. Why, Jeremiah? There were still enemy troops there, and they still had ammo. So why was I safe? True, but I wasn't anywhere that I could get in trouble. You ever thought of that? There were boys that went to Germany, boys that stayed stateside. When I heard of what they had to go through to maintain themselves, I was just out in the middle of the jungle. And I wasn't anxious to see any strangers. So sometimes we don't understand at the moment why we are in the circumstances that we are. If we'll take a little counsel, listen, we can find value.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry. We are looking for the same question from you.
Well, I wish you'd have sent me the questions before you asked me if I'd be on the panel.
Would you like us to come back?
What?
You want us to come back to you?
No. That wouldn't do any good.
I didn't think it would.
I was going through the viewing line last Sunday, and one of the ladies in the line told me that there was some question whether she judged me to be childish or childlike. And I'm not sure sometimes where you find the line between them, but I'm afraid that I'm not the greatest one to ask about putting an old head on young shoulders. My shoulders are 75 years old now, and my head is much younger than that. So if you want the reverse question to that, I could probably help you out a little bit. But it all comes back to try to develop the wisdom to make good decisions in your life. And of all the people or all the beings that you should listen to, you should strive to get close to God so that when you have a question, and there's not another mortal there that can give you the right answer, that you know where to turn and what to ask, so that you're using the wisdom of the heavens in your life rather than just your own wisdom. We live here such a short time that the wisdom we gain is probably not a lot to brag about in the grand scale of things. But Carol made a good point when she was quoting her father of learning to live for God and in the service of other people, rather than always looking out after your own selfish interests. And I think that that's probably one of the most mature things you can ever learn to do.
Thank you very much. That's very nice. Thank you. I'm glad that you reversed that question. That was wonderful. Elizabeth,
The problem about being so far down the line is everybody's
I know it gets harder and harder, doesn't it?
It gets harder and harder because, you know,
That's why
I
I put
think
those teachers on the end.
I had a friend a few years ago. It was at the time of Aunt Guinevere's funeral. She went to Aunt Guinevere's funeral and she came out crying, saying that she wanted that for her when at the end of her life. And then she proceeded to take a course that was completely opposite of that. She will never, ever, ever have that. So one of the things that I was thinking is, and I think I had this to some degree, but I had a vision of what I really wanted. Now, some of you boys, you think you want to go out and make money. Is that what you really want? What do you want for your life when you're 75? And it's hard, girls, to picture that. The number one thing. And to go through all of the things that you think you want in the next little while, and all the things that you want. What you want right now is going to be different than when you're 25. I don't think I've seen an exception. Okay, you're going to change and you're going to mature and your hormones are going to calm down and you're going to have a little bit more focus. But if you can decide right now the number one thing that you want in your life, and then proceed to make choices according to that number one thing. I'm not telling you what your number one thing is. I'm saying just decide. Hendrik, just decide your number one choice. Is your choice to be in the priesthood work? If it is, if that's your number one choice, start to make decisions that will help keep you there, because it's really easy to get sidetracked and be off. I mean, we've talked about, Joel was talking about the number of people that are still in the work and still alive at his age. Why? I have a lot of students that are in my class that are all over everywhere. The number one thing. Decide what it is and start making your choices that align with it. And then one of the things that I think has helped me, because it's really easy to get off track. You're going to get experiences in your life that are going to try to pull you off track. That is the job of Lucifer, is to pull you off track. So it's a lot of work to stay on track. But I've chosen mottos to help me, or little ditties, whatever you want to call them. One of Uncle Rich's statement was to maintain the power within yourself to encourage yourself. I've used that one a lot. One of the first ones that I developed was let your light so shine, that whole thing. So these are ones that I put over in my head to help me keep focused on what I really want. So I'm pretty close. I'm the youngest one here, but I'm pretty close to getting to 75. I don't have that much more time. And then you start feeling the pressure. Now, you don't feel the pressure when you're 18 because you don't think that you're going to ever be 75. But guess what? It might happen. And you're going to be the sum of all your choices. At that age, that is who you're going to be, is the complete sum of all your choices and experiences. Choose what you want that to look like and then stay on the road. I think when you choose the priesthood work, you can say that your course is pleasing. A course is a road. So if you're going to be on that road, your course is pleasing. Now, if you choose something else, then you can decide what that means to you, but decide what the most important thing is. Is the most important thing to have a girlfriend or a boyfriend or what? No, the most important thing to you, what you want your life to look like at 75. I think that will help.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Uh, this term, old heads on young shoulders, was one of the things I remember the very most about my high school years. It came from Brother Hammon as a challenge to the young people when I was there. And in thinking about that, the wisdom that it takes to be old comes from the experiences that we have in our life and how we choose to meet those experiences, the decisions that we make. And how do you be wise and have this old head when you haven't had those experiences? I think the main thing that I would like to share is a little addition to what Arthur said about listening. If you want to get the wisdom without having to go through the experience, that is one way you can do it, is by listening and taking into yourself the wisdom from other people's experiences before you have to experience them yourself. The other thing is what Elizabeth just said about knowing what it is that you want and living your life with the intent to get it. To know that you want your course pleasing to Heavenly Father, that you want a funeral like Aunt Guinevere's, or that you want to have the most money on the block, or, those kinds of things are what is going to drive what you learn from your experiences. And so old heads on young shoulders to me is those of us that can learn to listen as young people and connect the intellect that we have and the desires that we have for what we want and move forward with that. When she talked about the little ditties that you put in your mind, one of the things that I never really thought about till she said that is I have a little card that's underneath my glass on my dresser in my bedroom that said, "I see only the divinity in every person that I meet." What that has done for me is to help me see good in all people. If you can see good in all people, you can be more willing to listen, to learn from them, to get wisdom from them, and to endure them sometimes. Because sometimes it's like my sons say they had this man they're working with on some job they're doing that has just given them a whole lot of trouble. And after we talked, they said, well, Jesus loves Sabito. That was how they dealt with. Well, I can live with them if Jesus loves him. Yeah. So wisdom is the ability to love each other enough to learn from each other. And you can do that right now.
Thank you. And thank you so much for all of our panel. We appreciate you coming and sharing that today and giving us a good path forward on how to develop those good skills in our life. Thank you so, so much.